Harvey asked us to basically frame our comments, provide a current state and some recommendations. So for the frame here, the U.S. grand strategy basically is to strategically resource U.S. forces so that we can fight away games at long distances against superior numbers and win. Okay, so if we're doing that, we're going to have to do it with technology. Now, that's no real surprise to anybody. The only thing is I would say here is I'm not so sure that we actually secure that advantage. The thing that we're going to be relying on in the future, I'm not so sure that we actually secure that. That's from my perspective. We don't do it at conception, we don't do it through delivery, and we don't do it through sustainment, at least in my view. So the current state, he mentioned Bear Bryant. Bear Bryant used to, every time we'd go for a counterintelligence review for our organization, Bear Bryant would just ask a simple question. Before you leave here, I want you to tell me if we're winning. So that was pretty simple, and I'll answer that question sort of at the end of this paragraph here. But what I do know is my boss will say quite often, the threat's more profound now than ever before. The losses that we suffer are more profound now than ever before. And our opponents actually don't respect the classification, whether it's SAP, classified, unclassified, it doesn't matter, they're going to steal it. They don't respect the domain, whether it's a cyber domain or not a cyber domain. Only we respect that, right? Only we place ourselves at a disadvantage by creating these demarcation lines and then sticking to them and fighting each other with regards to that. Our adversaries, and that's our friends who are better at it than our enemies, and our capable enemies, they have the initiative in this exercise. And what that means is we're responding to them. They are not responding to us. So they are inside our decision process. We are not inside theirs. And that is here, from my perspective, in the United States. So, so to the question, are we winning? I think the most, Bear Bryant's question anyway, I think the most gracious way to answer that is, well, not yet. We're not winning. So it doesn't look that good from my perspective. So who's responsible for our current state? I think it's basically, the American government is the one that teaches industry and the government how to dance together. The government's not, from my perspective, the incentives and disincentives for industry are actually not well aligned to address challenges that I would propose are actually enduring. I think they're enduring disconnects that we have, and the challenge with that is the information age has made those enduring disconnects much more painful. So in a world and in a time when the advantage is to the attacker, we the Americans, trying to protect that technology are at a disadvantage. So I'll name 3 disconnects here very quickly, and from my perspective anyway. And have you ever thought about this? Those who will be taking casualties on future battlefields are not the ones that are making decisions today on how well we should be securing the technology that we'll be placing in their hands to save their lives and to win our national interests forward. Another way of putting that is your kids, my kids, your grandkids, and my grandkids will not have the advantage in the future because of that. So I would propose we need to think a little more about how it is and what it is that we're trying to protect, that technological advantage for the American military strategy moving forward. That's first. Second, the security and the acquisition of weapons is managed as an expense to be reduced, and I propose maximally reduced. It is not managed as a national security objective to be achieved in the delivery of an uncompromised weapon. Okay, so it kind of goes back to the first issue. Gosh, if our national strategy is based on this, you would think we would be spending just as much energy doing this as not. Next, for the taxpayer. For the taxpayer, if you ever wondered about this also, we talk about, the cost of a weapon, but what we look at dollars, right? So, but what would it not be a better measure to know the difference between a compromised weapon when compared to an uncompromised weapon? Wouldn't that be a better measure? And if you look at total cost, which would include lives lost or saved on a future battlefield, which again would be your kids, my kids, and our grandkids, I think that would probably be a better measure, and it would more acutely focus us on what really matters. So those are my brief comments there. So recommendations. We need to link the depth of our need for the technology on a future battlefield to an urgency today in securing that technology. Second, we need to place security at least on par with cost, schedule, performance, and weapon delivery. Third, we need to align the authorities, responsibilities, and resources so that we have incentives and disincentives to overcome those disconnects that I mentioned earlier, with the objective, I'd propose, of delivering uncompromised weapons. We do have an initiative ongoing now that we call Delivering Uncompromised, and we're about to get to the end of the white paper. It should be presented before the end of this month. And it basically talks about tax incentives for industry, insurance incentives for industry, change in litigation strategy to advantage us all and align our interests, international norms to ensure we're not stepping on any toes, and warranties and representations. So that's really quite in-depth, and there's a lot of stuff associated with that. But I'll take one piece out of that and briefly give some specificity. So what would a company be asked to do? And I want to say this very clearly again. To me, it's the government's responsibility. And the government, in fact, would align the resources so the firms are actually paid so that they would be competing and they would present these things as a comparative advantage that they're proud of achieving. So basically, an insider threat program, a lot of detail associated with what that could be, but basically continually monitoring your people, processes, and systems for insider threat. Second, continually monitoring your supply chain. Third, red teaming it. Fourth, ensuring the government can red team it. Fifth, refresh the people, processes, and systems so that they function at state of the art. And what does state of the art mean? State of the art basically means that's a moving target. So basically, delivering uncompromised would mean in a post-event review that a firm was operating at state of the art. And so that was the challenge, and a bunch of lawyers said, especially the one here at the end of the table, said that actually is doable. And finally, convey it through the primes down to the subs. That's a lot. It would require the shifts that we mentioned earlier, using those 5 different incentives for industry to get this right. But I would propose, and in conclusion, if we don't do it, our children and grandchildren will be eaten with wooden spoons. That concludes my remarks.